Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing a New Year's Eve inspired glam. Okay, so to start, I already have my eyebrows on just to save some time in this tutorial because I already have an eyebrow tutorial on my channel. So I'm gonna be grabbing one of my favorite concealers. This is the NARS Soft Matte Concealer in Custard. And I'll be prepping my eyes with this concealer. So I'll be taking a little bit of this product on the back of my hand and taking a smaller flat brush. I'll be using this to apply my cream concealer as my eyeshadow base. So you can see that I brought that concealer as my eyeshadow base all over my eyelid, but I really made sure that I brought it out towards my temple, out towards the inner part of my nose, just so when we do our foundation much later, there's not gonna be any gaps or holes where there's no concealer or foundation, and it's really gonna help to blend the makeup. Now that my eyeshadow base is on and blended out, I'm gonna set it with just a translucent pressed powder. This one's from Jouer. It's just a nice basic translucent powder. So what this is gonna do is just kind of lock down and set that concealer so it doesn't move underneath our eyeshadows. This powder also has a slight smoothing effect, which is really nice on your eyelids, especially if you're gonna go in with more of a dramatic look. Okay, now that my eyelids are officially prepped, now that they're set, we're gonna go in with our first eyeshadow. To start, I'll be using the Beautopsy palette from Hindosh. This is an all matte palette. So I'll be starting with the color Tan. When I'm starting any smoky eye or more dramatic eye, I always make sure that I throw a very neutral, I hate to say basic tone on my crease. And that way it just kind of sets the tone for the rest of the look, and it really helps to balance out whatever colors I'm gonna put on top, whether they're dramatic or they're glittery. It just helps to kind of set the tone. So taking that first color on a fluffy brush, I'm gonna start to blend this into my crease. And I'm really taking this shadow, since it is so light and neutral, it can kind of go a lot further and be undetected. So I'm gonna take it really far to the side of my nose and really out towards my temple. Just making sure it's really nice and blended all over. Grabbing a smaller blending brush, I'm gonna start to dip into Feel plus Real, and I'm gonna just go almost towards the center. You can see this is kind of like an ombre palette where it starts as one color and it ends as another one, but in the middle, there's a definite transition shade. And so I'm kind of going for slightly more on the Feel side, but grabbing a little bit of that gray tone as well. So with this color, it's a little more intense, so I'm not gonna be as loose with my blending. I'm gonna make it a little more precise and then go in later and blend it out some more with that fluffier brush. I am focusing more of this color on the outer corner of my eye just to kind of give it more of like that smoky cat eye kind of effect, and then blending it straight into my crease. But as you can see, most of that color is going to end up on that outer portion of my eye. Now I'm going to switch back to that fluffy brush that we used previously and then just kind of blend out the edges of this shadow and soften it a little bit more. Now that most of my crease colors are on and applied, we're gonna start to work on the eyelid, but before we do, I'm gonna apply just a little bit of this P. Louise eyeshadow base in 02. I'll be using this so the eyeshadow that I put on my actual eyelid is going to pop as much as possible. Since it's going to be a metallic, I want it to be super pigmented and super bright, and this is gonna help that out a lot. Just taking a little bit on the top of my hand. I'm just gonna work that into my brush. So I'll be looking straight ahead with my eyes completely open to make sure I know exactly where to place this on my eyelid so it doesn't end up in my crease. And I made sure to do my tough eye first so that way it's much easier to match my easy eye with my hard eye. Okay, so that's on. I'm just gonna take my fingertip and tap it in, which will also pick up any excess product that I don't want on my eyelid. Because you don't want too much of this because then it's actually gonna end up creasing the rest of your shadow. So just a nice thin layer is all you need. I'm gonna take a little bit more of that translucent powder that we used earlier, and then I'm just gonna press that on top. Since it's translucent, it's not really gonna affect the tones of the rest of the shadow. It's not gonna change them or alter them. Okay, now I'm gonna go back to that smaller blending brush and just go back over that line. And just make sure it's nice and blended and not, I don't want it to be too much of a cut crease. I just want it to stand out a little bit more when I put that metallic on top of my eyelid. So it's like a soft cut crease. And just making sure it's blended and it's not too much of a hard line. So moving on to my next shadow, this one's gonna be from the Dior Plum Toll palette. And I'll be mixing this color and this color. Switching to a smaller flat brush, I'll be really saturating one side of this brush with the eyeshadow. And then to make sure there's not a ton of fallout and also so this shadow is more pigmented and metallic, I'm gonna be wetting it with the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip Set and Refresh Spray. Now flipping to the other side of this brush where it's a lot cleaner, I'm gonna dip into that second shadow. And I'm just gonna start to layer this color on the outer corner of my eye. For a final touch, I'll be using the Bodyography Glitter Pigments in Spirit Quartz. This almost has like a pink reflective hue to it, which I think is so pretty. And it's gonna add just a little more pizzazz to our eyelid. These work best, in my opinion, when they're applied with your fingertip. So I do have long nails, but I'm gonna try to apply this the best I can with my fingertip. So just towards the center on the eyelid, I'm gonna be packing this on with my fingertip. It's not gonna seem super impactful on camera, but in person, this just adds such a magical like sparkle to your eyes. It's so beautiful. So before I go in and I clean up my eyeshadow that's fallen a little too far down, I'm gonna go in with a black eyeliner and start a wing liner. Making sure that I'm looking straight ahead and my eyes are open the whole time, I'm gonna start with a black pencil. Before I go and do this side, I'm gonna make sure I blend out this eyeliner first because this does dry down really fast. Okay, this side is pretty much blended. Now I'm gonna move on to this eye.
Let me fall back into sleep. But when I wake up, you say I had a real dream.
Grabbing the same brush, I'm gonna start to blend out this eye just really lightly. Going back to our Hindosh Beautopsy palette, I'll be taking the darkest color in this palette, same brush that I used to blend out my black eyeliner. I'll be using this two ways, to blend out that black eyeliner, to set it, and to make it a little more intense. But for me, you'll see I'm gonna close my eyes a couple times here and there as I'm blending, but that's because I got my initial application down and I know where it's landed, and then I can kind of be more loose and blend it out. So for this part, I'm gonna close my eyes just for a little bit. And I'm kind of just stamping this color over the eyeliner just to make it more intense, and then blending out the edges. Okay, it's gonna look messy for a little bit. Before I clean up this eyeliner, I'm gonna go back to my pencil liner. I'm gonna tightline my top lash line. Now that our eyeliner is applied, I'm gonna go in with one of my favorite techniques, using a clean, very small pointed Q-tip and micellar water. I'm gonna clean up my wing liner. Then taking a makeup wipe and just really gently getting the rest of that eyeshadow that had fallen down on my cheek. Try not to drag my under eye too much when I do this. So as I fine tune my eyeliner and I make sure it's even on both sides, the best it can be, because we all know, I've talked about this, I have a really hooded eye on this eye. So by lifting my chin just a little bit, I'm able to see where my wings line up and how they fall. And so for me, for this look, I want them to be more straight across my eyelid and not like rounded or sloped. So by lifting my chin up just a little bit, I can see where I need to fill in just a couple of gaps. Moving on to mascara, I'll be using the Buxom Cosmetics Extrovert Black Mascara. I'm just gonna do one thin coat because I'll be applying some false lashes right after. Before I finish the rest of my eye makeup, like my bottom lash line, I'm gonna be starting my foundation. I'll be using one of my favorites. I talk about this one all the time. It's the Dior Backstage Face and Body in 2W. Starting in the center of my face where I have the most redness and I need the most coverage. I'm just gonna start to work that foundation all over. Foundation's done. I'll be moving on to concealer. This one's one of my favorites. I've used this for so many years. It's the Maybelline Instant Age Rewind Concealer. This is a drugstore favorite. This is in the color Light Honey. I'm gonna give it a couple twists up. And this is my personal concealer, so I'm just gonna go directly under my eye with this sponge.
Let me fall back into sleep. When I wake up,
Before I finish blending out my concealer and really pressing it down and buffing off any excess product, I'm gonna let it sit for a couple seconds, actually a couple minutes, while I do the rest of my makeup. And that way it kind of self-sets. I've talked about this before. I love to let my concealer self-set before I go in and actually set it with a powder. This just gives it more of a flawless finish and it maintains the coverage, which I really need under my eye. Next, I'm starting my contour. I'll just be doing a very, very light cream contour first and then setting it with a bronzer. But to start, I'll be using the Huda Beauty Tantour Cream Contour in Fair. I'm gonna get some initially on my brush and I'm gonna take it on the back of my hand. And this is one of my favorite techniques that you'll see me do all the time for cream products especially, is taking some of the product, using it on the back of a clean hand, obviously, and then working it into your brush and really warming it up. So that way when it hits your face, it's a lot easier to blend and it helps to melt it into your skin a lot quicker. Like I mentioned, I don't want this to be super contoured or super dramatic. I just want to have like a really light wash of contour on my face. So it's not going to look super impactful on camera, but trust me, it just adds a little more dimension to my skin. So I'm just going to be stamping this across my forehead and a little bit under my cheekbones, and that's it. Going back to my foundation brush, I'm going to blend out the edges of that contour and just soften it, making sure there's no harsh lines, and then stipple it into my cheeks with that same foundation brush. Moving on to a liquid highlighter. I've been loving this one. It's the new Fenty Beauty Liquid Kilowatt Highlighter in Hustla Baby. Same technique, I'm going to take a little bit of this highlighter and pop it on the top of my hand. And with a clean beauty sponge, I'll be taking one end of it and really working it into that sponge. I'll be starting at the top of my cheekbones and I'll also hit the bridge of my nose. Taking more of the product, I'll be using my fingertip this time. I'm gonna pat this on the bridge of my nose. I don't like using the sponge for this part because I don't have as much control because the sponge is so large and it does expand once it hits your face. So if I use the sponge, it would kind of get all over in places that I don't want it. So I wanna make sure it's nice and precise, which is why I'm switching to my finger. Next up, I'll be using a cream blush. This one's from Westman Atelier. This is in the color Petal. So same technique I usually always use. I don't directly apply this to my cheek because it would really disrupt the makeup underneath. So first, I'm gonna be swatching it all over the top of my hand. And now I'm switching to a more dense, firm stippling brush. And I'll be working this cream blush into my brush before I apply it to my cheeks. Just getting all of it so the color is almost completely off of my hand. And then making sure I smile, I'll be hitting the very highest part of my cheek, so that way my cheeks are nice and lifted up.
Let me fall back into sleep. When I wake up, you say I got a real bedroom.
And then lightly bringing whatever's left over around my temple, just to give it a really pretty, cohesive, well-blended look. Now that my blush is complete, I'm gonna go back to my under eye. I'm gonna work out any creases that might have happened while I was letting my concealer self-set, and then I'm gonna go in and powder and set my under eye. Using the tried and true Laura Mercier translucent powder, I'll be taking this and dumping some in the palm of my hand. Switching sides from my highlighting end of my beauty sponge to a clean end, I'll be using this to apply my pressed powder. And this is damp too, so it's actually going to help to really melt that powder into my skin. I'll also be using this powder to just lightly reverse contour my cheeks, meaning I'm gonna use a light powder to almost highlight underneath my cheekbone, which is gonna bring out my contour and my blush even more. And I'm using a really small amount, so it's not gonna be super dramatic, but it's gonna give me a little bit of a lift up for my cheeks. Taking whatever's left over my sponge, I'm gonna just kind of graze over my lips to prep them for my lip liner. And this is one of my favorite tricks to keep your lip liner and your lipsticks on longer. If you just dust a little bit of loose powder, it almost acts like a little bit of a base, so your lipsticks and your liners have something to grip to. Moving on to lip liner, I'll be using the LC Cosmetics Remarkable Lip Liner in Nude. Before I get to the bottom, I'm going to blend out this line so it's not so harsh. Next, I'm grabbing one of my favorite lipsticks, but I happen to have depotted it, which is why it's in this palette. It's from Buxom Cosmetics. It's Fly Girl lipstick, and it's one of the most perfect nudes out there. So I'll be scooping some out and applying it directly to my. So I'll just be scooping out a little bit with my spatula. I'm grabbing that same brush that I used to blend out my lip liner. This lipstick has more of a peachy nude undertone to it, which I think is really pretty and really flattering, rather than going with something that's like a little too cool tone or doesn't have like that warmth underneath it, which could end up making me look a little more, you know, washed out, especially with this cool tone eyeshadow. So I really like it with this kind of look. Now that our under eye is done and set and most of our makeup is finished as well, I'm gonna go back to my under eye and start to work on my eyeshadow in that spot. So basically we're gonna take all the same colors that we used earlier in the crease and apply them on the bottom lash line. So I'm switching to a smaller, more flat brush. And I'll be dipping back into that tan color, that first color that we used. And just starting to work that directly underneath my bottom lash line. Okay, first color is done. Now I'm gonna dip into that second shade that we used, focusing more on the brown earth tone side. And then just slightly dipping into the gray.
Let me fall back into sleep. When I wake up, you say I had a real dream.
Moving on to lashes, I'll be using some individuals, but before I do, I'm gonna take some of the dark tone Duo lash adhesive and just put some on the top of my hand. I'll be starting with short individual lashes. This is from Monda Studios. Next, I'm setting my cream contour with a matte bronzer. This one's from NARS. It's the Matte Laguna Bronzer. Now that my individual lashes have had time to dry fully, I'm going to go in with one more coat of my mascara. I'm really just trying to get the root of my lashes to blend with the false ones. I'm not trying to get the tips of my lashes because I don't like that look personally. So I'm really just kind of pressing this at the root of my lashes and blending the two together. To finish off my makeup look, I'll be taking just a little bit of the Buxom Cosmetics Full On Plumping Lip Gloss in the color White Russian. And our last step in our New Year's Eve inspired glam is to set my makeup with the Milk Hydro Grip Set and Refresh Setting Spray. If you like this makeup look, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, if you want more makeup inspiration, don't forget to follow me on Instagram. I'm at Makeup by Nikki LaRose, and I'll see you next time. Bye.